Hey everybody, I'm so excited that you're checking out this video with my friend Jesse Schroeder. Many of you remember Jesse has been here in Louisville with us a couple times at Southeast. Jesse and I go way back to college, have known each other for a long time. And he's come down, done a couple different things with us, some training on regulation skills and other stuff. A lot of you guys, if you came to our Family is Forever event just a couple months ago when we were allowed to get together like that, you remember Jesse was there and did some great stuff. So I just asked him to just spend some time with me and talk about a couple things. So Jesse, you want to share those that haven't met you and know who you are, a little bit about yourself and your family and kind of what you do?
Yeah, thanks for the invite, Blaine. It was good to hear from you, and it's definitely always great to connect with your community, even if it is, virtually and remotely.
Yeah.
It's a lot more fun when we can see everybody, but glad to be back and connecting. So, I live in Columbus, Ohio, and I am a social worker, a child and family therapist. For about 7 or 8 years, I have worked pretty closely with teenagers, kids, and families who are dealing with pretty significant behavioral and mental health challenges here in Columbus. And in about the last 4 or 5 years, a real focus of that has been on trauma informed care and trauma therapy. And kind of the school of thought that I've sort of been trained in is really focused on some brain-based, brain science that helps us to understand kind of how our brain works, how are we responding to our environment around us, and if we can increase that understanding of our brain and what our brain needs, then we can be a little bit more effective and more successful in kind of responding to some of those behaviors. And really, a lot of it is about helping ourselves to be more calm and regulated so we can be more effective and better parents and caregivers for the kids and the other people in our house that we're dealing with. So that's
Yeah.
kind of where I'm coming from. And yeah, it's always great to connect with you guys.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I love the stuff that you work on and the conversations that we have because it is just very profound sometimes the ways in which some of that brain science works really well with kids with trauma, but it also applies to just about anybody. That this is just how our bodies are wired and how they work. And the more we understand that, the better we are, like you said, as parents, but also for our kids and parenting them well, which is just really great. So I know we've chatted a little bit just about some things that you've been noticing and seeing, some ways that you've been helping families in your community kind of respond better and parent well through this pandemic moment. So if you were to say kind of what are some two big things that would be some good advice you would offer families, what's one of those things that you would say? And this is just such a powerful thing that we're trying to remind families to do.
Yeah, I mean, so anytime we're talking about what our brain needs to really be healthy and to be, connected and regulated in the moment, uh, our brains love movement. And for all of you that were part of any of the conversations and trainings that I did with you all earlier this year, you know that talking about regulation is such a key part of this. So just kind of real quick, thinking about the how our brain is kind of structured. We have this lower part of our brain that is all about keeping us alive, keeping us safe. We've got this middle part of our brain that's all about the relationships. And then we eventually kind of get up into that kind of smarter thinking part of our brain. And the thing is, if those lower systems aren't kind of healthy and online or regulated, like we say, it's kind of like the levels of a house, and that foundation of the house is shaky, and everything on top just kind of falls down. And so those lower level systems, they really respond to movement. It's really all about getting your body moving. That increases the oxygen to our brain, and it really ties back to rhythm. And it's that essential heartbeat rhythm. It's that essential rhythm of the day as our body is moving. And this is kind of one of those things, like, it's super easy to talk about because we see it everywhere in our life. I mean, if I'm feeling stressed out, I start pacing or I start tapping my foot. If I kind of am, feeling a little amped up, I might turn on some music, and that music, I really connect with it, and it really kind of makes me feel good. So we see rhythm all around us throughout our day, and it always is kind of connecting and is a positive thing. The challenge with our current situation is a lot of the things that we normally would do that would provide some of that movement and some of that rhythm, we don't have anymore. And even one of the most basic things is like getting up, walking out to your car, going for a drive to work. There's just a lot of rhythm in that, just in the rhythm of traffic, the music you're listening to. Then you get back out of your car, walk into your workplace, and even just the getting up and getting down and walking around your office, that gives your body some of that movement that you need. And now so many of us are just kind of in our homes, in our apartments, in a much more restricted environment. And that daily movement isn't happening nearly as much. So we've really kind of got to be intentional, be creative about increasing the amount of movement that we're doing every day. Otherwise, our brain just kind of slowly kind of sinks down and gets more and more dysregulated, and we are more negative and reactive in interacting with people.
Yeah. No, I had to go I went and put my Fitbit back on because for a couple of weeks at home, I wasn't wearing it. And the first day I put it back on, I mean, I had like 1,000 steps at 5 o'clock, and I was like, oh, that's terrible. Like I've been sitting still way too long. And it's not about, I think too, it's not about exercise, right? This isn't we're not telling you like, hey, make sure you're getting fit in the middle of quarantine, which I think a lot of people are kind of talking about. That's not really what this is. It really is just moving some, getting up, like you're talking about, just walking to the other room, walking up the stairs and back down, just getting your body like moving a little bit is just helpful to feel more regulated and feel more
comfortable. I mean, the truth is, of course, exercise is great. If you can get in a 30-minute workout, hey, more power to you. I'm not telling you to shut that down. That's great. Get in an extra 10 minutes for me, because it's not happening for me, so absolutely, if you can do that longer stretch of exercise, that's great. But exercise is one thing. What I'm kind of talking about is short bursts of movement that provide that regulation that your brain says, all right, I just got to get a little bit of this out. I just got to get a little bit of this stress out. So like one example that this is really kind of this is a 2-for-1 that is really kind of great. A lot of your kind of cleaning tasks around the house provide a lot of movement. If you're doing the dishes, you're just kind of, you're standing up, you're taking one thing from one counter, you're putting it in the sink, you're washing it, you're putting it over here. If you're vacuuming, if you're walking around the house, pushing that vacuum, that has a lot of rhythm and a lot of movement and a lot of motion to it. If you're wiping down the counters, if you're wiping down the windows, those are those kind of things that we're talking about that just gets that top part of your brain, some of that movement and that regulation that you need to kind of get back online, to help you feel that you can kind of respond to the stress in the moment, and it provides some of that rhythm that you need. So that's kind of one of the things that we've sort of been suggesting to families and folks that we've been working with is, hey, we're all in our homes a lot more now than ever. I used to be able to get away with vacuuming once a week. That's not happening anymore because we're here all day, every day. So, getting out, a couple times a week to run that vacuum, we're all really paying attention to cleaning things off. So doing the dishes, that's just a simple thing that I can get into that rhythm. So, some listening to music, moving around while you're listening to that music. Simple things, even just like, throwing a ball back and forth with your child, rolling a ball back and forth on the ground. There are so many parts of interactions with other people that are tied to rhythm and tied to movement. And the more we're doing that and the more we're finding creative ways to do it, it's really going to benefit us. So, go ahead.
No, I mean, I think it's good. I think too, it's a thing that like our kids don't often get the opportunity to do when they're in a normal school setting, right? Is to get just those like short breaks every 20 minutes, 30 minutes to like get some movement in. And like, we've been doing that a lot where it's like, hey, go jump on the trampoline for 5 minutes before we sit down and do the next thing at school. Like we got through one thing. Now go jump on the trampoline for 5 minutes and I'm going to get up and go get a cup of coffee and walk around the house a little bit. So like I'm regulating, they're regulating. I'm not jumping on the trampoline to regulate, but I'm doing what works for me, right? What's soothing for me is to like step away, take a drink of coffee. Now I'm ready to come back and try and get through the next project because the last one didn't go as well as I thought, kind of thing, So allowing space both for you and your kids to find a regulating moment, I think,
It's
with
funny because there are
movement.
all these little times in a typical day at school or at work that we're moving and we're
Mm,
going from spot to spot, and we're not even really thinking about it. We don't say to students like, all right, it's break time. The bell just rings and they go from classroom to the next classroom. But in your typical middle school or high school, that could be a few hundred yards away, and they're walking at a pretty quick pace for 2.5 or 3 minutes, and they're talking to some of their friends, and then they sit back down. And it actually is kind of built in, and we don't even think about it. For some
mm-hmm.
of the younger kids, they're going from the carpet to the seat. They're going from table to table in their stations. They go from classroom to lunchroom. There's a reason why they still have recess for those elementary classes for them to get out and just run around. So,
Yeah.
yeah, for my family, we've been thinking about, we try to get out for some kind of a walk in the middle of the day. And even if that's just sort of, we live in a cul-de-sac, even if that's just 4 minutes around the cul-de-sac, it's not really far. It's not really exercise. And there's something else about that too, that we talk a lot about in training, about being side by side with someone. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
our interactions at home can be face to face. Let's work on our homework together, or what's your plan for the day, or have you cleaned up your area? And when we get kind of face to face with somebody, it can be a little bit more intimidating. It's a little bit more kind of aggressive. And when you come side by side, it's more supportive. It's a little bit less threatening. So especially if you're kind of one of those people that finds yourself always in a tug of war, always in a power struggle with the kid you're working with, or somebody in your family, try getting side by side and going for that walk side by side. We call that being in parallel with that
Yeah.
person,
Yeah.
just being side by side. Then you kind of notice you sync up your steps. You'll kind of notice you start walking a line together. And that is that co-regulation that we're talking about, where
Right.
one person feeds off of the regulation of the other person. So that kind of going for a walk together is a big one that's great. Some parents may not want to think about this, and this isn't really movement oriented, but sitting side by side and watching a short episode, or playing a
Yeah.
video game side
Video
by
games.
side.
Yep.
Hey, this is a unique time we're in, and if video games is going to help you kind of just disconnect a little bit, kind of zone in, and there's a little bit of hand rhythm going on there, that can be really co-regulating in its own way as well. So
Yeah.
um,
No, I mean, I think you're trying to manage and the screen time to a degree, because kids are on screen so much with Zoom calls for school and stuff, which I get. But if it's a moment where you can also show this interest in something they're interested in,
yeah,
right? And side by side, like being in this parallel moment, and you're showing interest in a thing that kid's interested in. It's one of the things I recommend most often for the middle and high school age kids, is for parents, like, do they like video games? You're gonna have to
yeah,
learn how to like video games a little bit, even
yeah.
if you don't, and
It's
just
a great time to let the
enter into
kid be
their
the
world.
expert on something too.
Yes,
Whether it's a
yeah,
middle school or high school kid, or even a younger kid. I mean, they probably are understanding this stuff way better than me. So, all
right.
right, hey, teach me how to do this. And if we're playing, some kind of Call of Duty game, and I'm probably going to die every single time, and they're going to feel really good about that. But hey, great. That makes them kind of, they've got that
Makes them the
sense of,
winner. Yeah, yeah.
yeah, right on. That's cool. And okay, I got to humble myself a little bit for that, and not get as uptight about it.
I think
But
the other one I think of too, that's a good parallel, is the cooking, right? Like, if you can cook with your kids, make a meal together, do something. I mean, so many people are making bread. I've made bread, and I've made homemade pretzels now with the kids, which is fun. Not that hard, not as hard as I would have thought.
yeah,
And there's this tactile thing. The kids are touching the dough and pulling it, and we're talking about like yeast and some stuff like that. But really, it's just fun. It's like playing with Play-Doh, right? But at the end of it, you get to
yeah.
eat the Play-Doh. So
And
there's
you're
some,
exactly right. You're naturally going to be at the
yeah,
counter
at the
side
counter
by
side by
side.
side. Yeah.
Yeah. And think about
So
all the rhythmic things that are involved in that too. I'm going to hand you this utensil. You're going to stir up this bowl of something. You're going to pour it into here. There's a big rhythmic component that comes into that as well. And then hopefully, if it turns out all right, you got a real nice reward at the end too. If your
yeah,
pretzels turned out all right, you get to eat it, and
they were
everyone
great, man.
feels
I
Yeah.
ate a lot of pretzels in like a day and a half. So,
Nice. Nice. Right
all
on.
right. So I know, so movement's one big piece, and
Yeah.
we're already kind of even in this parallel
Yeah.
conversation. I think the other one that you and I've talked about is really just relationship.
Yeah.
That, relationship has to be just a powerful thing that you look for and find ways. So what would you say? Why is that so important for folks in this moment?
Yeah. The relational piece, I've been thinking a lot about how we don't really know how valuable something is until it's taken away.
Mm,
And we have so much taken for granted the relationships that we've had, just with people at work, with people at school. I work with a lot of educators and teachers, and I would hear a lot of teachers kind of um, wish for a day off school or wish for a week off school. And now they are all missing that presence and that connection and that relationship with their students. And so the power of those relational connections cannot be overstated. We're just wired for feeding off of that relational interaction. And so having those conversations, having that interaction, hearing from somebody else really helps that middle part of our brain, that relational part of our brain, and it really helps our soul. It really helps our spirit to know that we are valued, that somebody cares about us, and it brings that sense of connection and regulation that we need. So, I think we're all kind of finding the value of the video chats, that's meaningful, and that is good. But I've really been encouraging people just to get back to the old school phone call.
yeah.
If you can't schedule a video chat with somebody, that's okay. Pick up the phone and call a family member. Call an old friend. Call somebody from work or from somewhere else to just say, hey, just thinking about you. Just wanted to say hi. Hope the day's going all right. And it's kind of what's neat is it's a similar principle as far as the timing. It doesn't have to be this long, really meaningful 30 minutes. Why are you calling me? What's the reason for this? It can just be 2.5 minutes of just wanted to say, hey, thinking about you, hope the day's going all right. And hey, I'll hope to talk to you soon. And that quick interaction can have this kind of regulating positive effect that'll last 45 minutes or an hour. So little bit of that relational connection has a long last throughout the day. And it doesn't have to be some big ordeal. It's just kind of a quick hit, but it gives our brain that connection that we need. Somebody's thinking about me. And there's also this kind of component that we call a serve and return, a back and forth. We think
Hmm.
about this a lot. I know you've talked with your community a lot about attachment and that kind of interaction between the
Yeah.
caregiver and the child. It's all tied into that. So
Yep.
when I reach out and I make this relational connection with somebody, it means something to that person because I'm thinking about them, I care about them, and they're like, oh, that's really nice. Like, oh man, they just called me out of the blue. That's really cool. And it means something to me because I'm getting that connection with them. And so now this back and forth interaction becomes a positive loop for both of us together. So it's really kind of a win for both people when you make that relational connection.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about it a lot recently in just the sense of like there's grace in both the giving and receiving of care, right?
Definitely.
So a lot of times we think in these moments like, well, I've got to find ways to give and I've got to find ways to serve and like how can I help other people in my community that are suffering? And that's like great, and there is like a real value to that, but there's also this value in like receiving that at times and being open to, oh yeah, somebody's checking on me, and like that makes me that's that's good, and I need to in that moment be willing to say, yeah, here's how it's really going,
Yeah.
and here is what's been hard, and here's what's been challenging, here's what's been difficult in these moments, and so yeah, there is that back and forth and that return, which is just really powerful.
So another kind of like key idea that I've been thinking about a lot that I think is tied into all of this is hope, and is
Mm-hmm.
that we've got to be tied to hope. One of my favorite passages in scripture talks about being a prisoner of hope. And
Mm,
so how are we just so connected to hope that we're going to get through this, we're going to get out of this, it's going to get better. And so just to get a little bit kind of nerdy, the whole idea of hope is that I have some sort of a frame of reference that things could be better. but I can only have that belief that things are going to be better if I've had an experience of something good. And so when I reach out and I call you and I say, "Hey, Blaine, just wanted to call to say I'm thinking about you. Just you came to mind. Hope your family's doing all right. That gives you a frame of reference and gives you a connection point that, man, there's good people out there in the world, and people do care about me, and it gives that idea that things are going to get better in the future. And so we become bearers of hope to other people. We are bringing hope to our friends, to our family members, to that community. And again, it just kind of has this reciprocal back and forth effect. I've definitely had afternoons where just the weight of everything has really kind of hit me, and it just feels like, man, this is overwhelming. This is really tragic. And in that time, I kind of want to isolate. I just kind of want to go to my room and shut off the world. But I've tried to fight against that, to reach out, to call a loved one, and in that moment say, hey, I just calling to say hey, and pretty inevitably it turns into a longer conversation, and we both feel positive after it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's finding those ways to feel connected in the moment when you're disconnected, and feel better and feel okay, and go, well, that was helpful, like that was good, and now I'm ready. Like you said before, right? Those just a couple minutes can have a couple hours worth of value out of them. I mean, I know before this moment, man, whenever my phone rang, it was the most annoying thing, and now I'm like, oh, somebody's calling me, I'm so excited
Yeah,
to answer, right? And
yeah,
so there's this new kind of reality of, like, we all kind of look forward to that. I've talked on the phone to people way more
right.
in the last couple of weeks than I ever have before. And it's because, like, I'm like, yeah, I don't really want to text, and I don't even need to FaceTime with you or get on a
Yeah,
video chat. Like, we just talk, and like, I just want to hear your voice, and like, that's good. And several times I've done it with some friends where I went out after the kids were down, went and took a walk around the neighborhood and was talking with a friend of mine. So I'm getting movement and relationship at the same time,
and then that's
right?
like
And
the
kind of
sweet spot, man. Yeah, that's
doubling it
it.
up. Yeah,
Yeah, when we can combine those two things together, and you think about all of like our favorite activities and the things that really make us feel good about stuff, even, I think something a lot of people are really, really missing is sports, is playing
yeah.
sports activities. And that's like the ultimate. You're on a team, you're with people you care about, you've got this relationship, and you're moving and you're doing something active together. So bringing in movement and relationship together, that's the sweet spot where our brain is just like, oh yeah, this is really, I feel really good, I feel really regulated and connected right now. And so, I mean, all the things you were talking about, like cooking is a huge one with that. You're
Hmm.
cooking side by side, if you're going for a walk side by side with somebody, listening to music together with somebody else. So when you're having that phone conversation with somebody, if you can, put in the earbuds and go for a walk while you're talking
Yeah.
to them. And you're going to get that rhythm and that relationship at the same time. And it's really going to hit that sweet spot of connection. So, finding ways to do that with your kids and with your family, you just might kind of have to get creative. My kids have taken the cushions off the couch, and it's, we're jumping around and playing floor is lava. We're doing our morning kind of stretches and our kind of warm ups with our YouTube yoga videos, and they're stretching right alongside with us. And
Hmm.
sometimes they're just jumping on the couch, and it's like, okay, we got to just roll with that, and that is what it is. So
Yeah.
finding those times for movement and relationship together, that's really when you're hitting it. It's really good.
Yeah, and I mean, we have daddy school at our house 3 days a week, and it starts with a dance party in the kitchen. Like, it's
Yeah.
movement, relationship. Like, they know now, like that's how we start. That's what we do. We get some wiggles out. Now we're gonna sit down for
You're
a few
putting
minutes
that
and
on the
get through things.
next Zoom recording, right? We're gonna get
Yes,
seeing you doing
yes,
those dance
yes.
parties.
Not so much. It is, the kids love it though, man. They love it.
Yeah.
It's fun. Yeah, I mean, I think whatever you can do to make that fun and interesting, exciting, and make it something you're doing with them, right? Again, you're getting that movement and relationship all in there together. So,
I think what's
man,
cool about that dance party idea you're talking about is how you're getting on their level.
yeah,
There's such a challenge I think way too much of myself as a parent. And, I think, okay, well, I can't dance, that's so embarrassing. Who's watching me? Who cares?
Nobody cares.
We've been reading a lot of books together, and they just love it. They want me to just keep reading their stories with them.
Mm-hmm.
So for me to kind of put my stuff aside for 15 or 20 minutes to get on their level. Sometimes that's literally getting on the floor with them, crawling up to the top bunk, or whatever that is. And yeah, just kind of being silly and having fun along with them is going to really kind of make that neat connection for them. And it helps me loosen up a little bit too. So
Yeah. 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 Cause I think you can get kind of sucked in and consumed with, you can't really ever leave your office anymore because it's now in your home. Right.
mm-hmm.
And so there is a freedom, last week at one point, I walked upstairs. I was just going to get some more water and a snack before I came back down to work some more, but the kids were up there and they were goofing off doing something. And so I started picking them up and I'm like doing squats
Mm-hmm.
with the kids as my weights or whatever. And they love it. Now they ask for it all the time. It was probably a bad thing to start, but it was like, it got me some movement, it got me some energy out. And like, in my normal office day, I can't go pick up a coworker and do squats with them. That wouldn't be appropriate. But in my house, it's okay, so yeah.
Those are some of
Jess,
the neat things. I mean, I don't know. I always hesitate to bring this up because I think I don't want to minimize the legitimate suffering and struggling that people are going through. And there are some real challenges.
mm-hmm.
We're fortunate enough that, we're still working, we're healthy, we're safe. And I know a lot of folks are really dealing with some real challenges. But at the same time, I'm so curious and I'm trying to pay attention to what are these kind of hidden gems? What are these sort of, sometimes we think about forgotten wisdom. What were some of the things that we forgot how much fun it is to have a simple lunch with your kids? We forgot
Mm-hmm.
about how great it is to share a meal together. I've been doing science experiments with my daughter.
Yeah.
We did the classic baking soda and vinegar
Mm-hmm.
volcano. I mean, and so what are the little gems that are going to be reminders? Like, yeah, this actually is kind of a gift that's going to come out of this. And the suffering is real, the struggle is real, and I've really been overwhelmed with grief for our families and for the people we're working with, and been praying for and working hard on their behalf. But we also know that out of adversity comes resilience, and out of the fire we are refined. The pearl comes from that little bit of sand, and comes from being refined and refined. And so how are families going to be brought together? How am I going to learn and be amazed at how my children I get to watch them grow up in front of my eyes now more than ever. And so what are some gifts that are coming out of this time?
Yeah. Yeah. And I mean, I think if God can bring beauty from ashes, then that's exactly what we're talking about, right? That like, this is not an ideal moment. Nobody ever wanted this moment. I don't believe that God wanted this moment either. I think it exists, but it's how do we find beauty and hope in the midst of it, and look for ways that it can be a moment for connection, for relationship, and really some stuff. And I think there are some families that are seeing some opportunities to bond and connect, and that their kids are doing well by not being in a school environment and some stuff like that. So there are some wins in this. Certainly still struggles and still challenges, and not every day is good. But yeah, you look for those wins, you look for those moments and go, that was good. I'm happy about today. And I'm happy to see what that's done. So,
and when those struggles hit, and those, when the bottom falls out, I mean, we've definitely had the tears and the door slams and the yelling as well. Hey, we just kind of give ourselves a little bit of grace and say, yep, we're certainly not the only ones feeling these challenges right now. We're all in this together. And so it's pretty normal to be feeling that stress. But then also kind of looking for the times when we go, wow, this is something really kind of special. Wouldn't have had this opportunity. So, and trying to be grateful for that.
Good. Hey, Jesse, thanks for your time. Thanks for sharing. I think both of those, movement, relationships, those are both some great things to go and spend some time working on. So thanks for your time. We appreciate your energy and your willingness to kind of speak into our families and our community.
Always enjoy it. It's always a privilege.
I appreciate it, buddy.